Well, this morning, Nigel Farage promised to bring immigration levels back to normality if UKIP win at the election. Well, UKIP's Migration and Financial Affairs spokesperson Stephen Woolfe joining us now live from Westminster. Thank you for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. What does back to normality mean?
Well, when my grandmother came over from Ireland in the 40s and the 50s, we were looking at immigration numbers of around 25 to 30,000 a year. Compare that to the numbers you've just mentioned, where we're having total immigration of over 600,000, that's the city of Aberdeen and Liverpool added together, and net migration of 300,000. I think the people of this country recognise that those are staggering numbers, that this Conservative government have failed, and all they're asking is for people to actually have politicians who can put in place a programme that reduces the numbers over time. OK,
so 25 to 30,000 is what UKIP is hoping to aim for?
No, those are kind of average numbers that we saw then. We do have to recognise that we're in a slightly different world and that our immigration numbers are different to the way they were then. Take, for example, out of the 600,000, we had nearly 196,000 students. Now, it's my policy that we would remove that from the immigration numbers because they are a benefit to our country. We also have international responsibilities over asylum. That number has increased. And family members, a very important part of our numbers, is just under 100,000. And that is a consequence, obviously, of EU migration, clearly. So that part is something that will be very difficult to touch. Where we're looking at is work-related migration.
Shouldn't we, what we'd be looking at is, rather than migration, shouldn't we be looking at the benefit system? Isn't that what most people are concerned about here in the United Kingdom? I
think the benefit system is one aspect of it, but very clearly, Kay, I've seen significant numbers and research from the OECD, even from the EU, and recently from the University College of London's own statistics that show where you have low-skilled migration in large numbers, you get two aspects. One is wage compression and wage reduction, and secondly, you also get displacement of what they call native workers. So by controlling low-skilled migration, you hope over a period of time that you will get some natural wage inflation, you'll get competition, you'll be able to train more of your own people, and remember, we've got nearly 1 million young people who need training into jobs, and that will improve the economy and well-being for people as a whole. OK,
so who would you initially be saying, when you run the country, who would you be saying, "Are you out"?
Oh, no, that's a little bit unfair there, OK? We're not saying, "Are you out." I absolutely made it clear in my policy statement for those EU citizens and people who are already here that are allowed and legally allowed here to work, then you're safe. You would have the right to indefinite leave to remain, and I think that's only the right and proper thing to do. What we have to do is manage the process in the future. And what we have said, and I know it sounds tough, we would have a moratorium, i.e. no low-skilled migration for 5 years, and we will bring a commission in that would consider what would the appropriate numbers, what would be the parts of the points and how the points would be allocated under the points-based system for highly skilled workers.
OK, you say legally allowed here, they would be allowed to stay, but presumably you would be in a position where you would want to make it illegal for some people to be here.
Well, there is already an illegal process here. The illegal process would be that you'd have to apply for a visa system, and we know that in our country there are lots of people who are in the Calais camps making their journeys to there, coming across in boats and in the backs of lorries that are legally trying to get into the United Kingdom. That's unfair of those people who have legally made the application process, proven that they have the skills or the ability, or the skills that we need, and have passed that process. So we just want to make sure that that is fair. But secondly, and more importantly, Kay, the EU makes a distinction between EU citizens and non-EU citizens. And the immigration policy I set out today for UKIP makes sure that on any visa system we're treating the whole world exactly the same. I really don't care if you've got a German doctor and an Indian doctor. If my leg is falling off or I've got it damaged, I want the person with the best skills from wherever you come from.
But what if you can only let one of them in?
Well, I think that's highly unlikely. That's an issue for the Commission to actually make a decision on how many workers that we need. And remember, one part of that Commission will be those in relation to the health services, because they're a key component. And we've got an opportunity here to allow ourselves to train those 100,000 people who made applications to be nurses, and also to allow our doctors and surgeons to come here, because that's exactly the numbers that they've told the Commission we need.
Yeah, bottom line is, though, if people want to come here and they're desperate enough, they'll always find a way.
Well, that comes through the asylum process. okay, if they're illegal immigrants or they're a genuine asylum, and we've seen an increase in that. And again, I made sure that in the statement today we will comply with our United Nations conventions and we will have our international responsibilities. I think that's a responsible country dealing with that, but that's a smaller portion of our immigration numbers. And clearly, one thing that is unfair, and I think everyone will agree, is that most of those asylum people are being left there for a long time with their cases not dealt with. We will put the resources in to speed them up so that once they are allowed to stay here, don't forget they then can become a part of the contribution to our society, which is what they want to do.
You make a very good case. George Osborne says you're making it up as you go along.
Well, I've been working on the numbers for 6 to 8 months. We've been reviewing the ONS figures. We've been reviewing the immigration policies, rules, regulations. I've been taking soundings from business. I've been talking to think tanks. And I've had to look at this very, very carefully and considered about this. We're about what the future of this country can be. And I believe that this policy, if set into place, would actually enable people to finally say that there is a government in place who has considered our concerns about immigration, dealing with it both in the short term and the long term. It is fairer for everybody, and it's something that they will believe in, and I think it will be a template for other countries. Now,
quite a lot of your senior figures can't decide when your manifesto is going to be published. When is it going to be published?
Well, I'm being kept in secret about this. Nigel has referred to that no one will be interested in the election proper until after the Easter elections. The Easter holidays. Perhaps I need a holiday now. And so that's, I think, is when it will come out.
OK, so after the Easter holidays, that's when we'll see your manifesto. And will we hear about the NHS and what's going to happen as far as the economy is concerned? Pensions, of course, will be a big issue as well. Any clue as to what might be in it as far as those are concerned?
Well, yes. In terms of the NHS, Louise Bors set out, as our health spokesman, set out a very clear policy on the NHS last week, and we're obviously contributing £3 billion extra into that, which we can save through cutting the various quangos and getting out of the EU and some of the policy cuts that we've got put in place, like HS2. And you'll see from Patrick O'Flynn, our spokesman on the economy, we'll talk about how we want to raise the threshold before anyone has to pay any tax at all for those on minimum wage, and how to deal with those workers in the middle of being caught by higher rates of taxation. So there is quite enough for you there, but I'll leave that to yourself to deal with Patrick and Louise.
I want to have a look at all of those figures and then we can question you on it in a bit more detail. But final thought, quite a lot of the girls here in the office, so I think we've got 4 or 5 of them who are expecting babies at the moment, and they wanted to know what you would do about maternity pay.
Well, I think we've made it absolutely clear that maternity pay will stay as it is. I mean, I often find this surprising that people have suggested that we want to remove it. I've never seen that. So they're safe. My wife has just had a baby. Well, it's 2 years ago. It feels like only yesterday. And I think you're pretty safe on there. We respect that.
OK. We'll talk to you again soon, I'm very sure. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Kate.